Now, some would call them heroes. They thought they were doing the right thing, but their bosses felt differently. Now they're all unemployed and wanting to know what they did wrong.
I worked for a major department store in the asset protection. I was assaulted from behind. I was forced to defend myself against multiple people simultaneously. As a result, my employment was terminated. As I was doing my routine floor surveillance, I observed 3 subjects. They looked like young adults in their early 20s, and they were selecting multiple quantities of similar merchandise, coats, puffer sweaters, jackets. While on the way to make an apprehension, I was assaulted from behind by one of the subjects. And he basically trucked me from behind. We struggled for about 5 seconds, 6 seconds before finally I let go of him and he went outside of the double door exits. I spin around and then there's 2 other guys and they start running towards me. And then the guy that ran out of the building runs back in and he grabs my shoulder from behind. I grabbed him and I took him to the floor. He immediately stopped. He looked up at me and said, okay, I give up. I'll go with you. The rest of his team dispersed and left. In a situation like that, it probably went as good as it could have. So about 9 days before my incident, there was an associate from a location in Philadelphia who was stabbed to death as a result of engaging with the shoplifter. I feel like I could have been the next person to lose their life. I was in a heightened state of alert, right? And then Monday, I was notified that my employment was terminated. And that came as a shock to me. If a person doing the same job as me in a different location dies 9 days before my incident occurs, and then they just say, okay, well, you're in a similar situation, you didn't die, so you're in the wrong. That's treating me as completely disposable.
You did what you were hired to do,
Yes,
and you
sir.
got fired. So what did they say to you about, why were you fired? What was their reason?
They came up with some policy violations.
So how often did you see shoplifters in your job?
Every single day.
Every day.
Usually between 2 and 5 times a day.
And they're getting more and more brazen.
Yes, they are.
And when you would confront them, what would usually happen?
Typically, I'd wait till they exited the building. I'd wait outside. As soon as they got about a foot or 2 outside of the exit, I'd approach them, identify myself with an ID card and verbally ask them to return the unpaid for merchandise. Depending on how they responded, that would then determine how I reacted. So say, for example, somebody was compliant. Okay, great. Let's go back inside, sign some paperwork, and then you could be on your way. If they started to get a little bit panicky, I just talk them through it. It's no big deal. We're just going to keep it in-house. I don't want to get law enforcement involved. It's not that big of a deal. Usually that's enough to calm people down. However, in some instances, sometimes people will fight or they'll try to run. So we're thinking about traffic coming by. If somebody's going to run or they're going to get hit by a car, we're thinking about their safety and our safety and the safety of bystanders.
Mm-hmm. They actually told you initially you did fine, right?
Yeah, so I immediately reported the incident to my direct report, which was my manager. And he said, man, if I was in your situation, I don't know what I would have done differently. He said, you should be fine.
Well, here's an excerpt from Macy's where this took place. It says, Macy's deploys visible and plainclothes asset protection personnel in our stores and coordinates closely with local and national law enforcement agencies in assessing risk and response. Now, I think what they're trying to do is make a non-response response, but what they're saying is they prioritize safety of customers and colleagues. But you're a single father, you got fired 5 days before Christmas. This had an impact on you.
It had a major impact. I went through a phase of shock. I couldn't believe it because I operated within the policy. There's a difference between going out, stopping somebody, and then if they become non-compliant, you have a chance to get away and taking them to the ground and trying to handcuff them. That's a no-no. You want to stay away from something like that. In my situation, I was attacked from behind. So in this instance, it's a self-defense situation, and you're completely allowed to defend yourself. They tell you that verbally in the training. They tell you that through the documentation in the training. You have to sign off on it, so they know you're allowed to do that. But 5 days before Christmas, finding out that I was a victim of assault and that I had to defend myself against multiple assailants simultaneously,
And it's all clear cut on camera from start to finish. And they have all that data that they could research. They could look at all my previous apprehensions and times that I went ahead and disengaged and let people go away without further incident and took the loss. They know that I'm capable of doing that. But in this situation, I had no other recourse but to defend myself. And then to get terminated for that by somebody making a judgment who's never been in the position before.
Yeah.
They can't speak to it.
Well, now, there were factions that wouldn't release and clear the video, but I've seen the video, and you're describing it exactly right. I mean, you got blindsided from behind and took measures to protect yourself.